Paul Philip Levertoff first published Love and the Messianic Age in 1923, and it has been out of print since then. Currently, in libraries that report to the World Catalog System, there are only 15 extant copies remaining. I remember when we received a photocopy of the book at First Fruits of Zion. I decided to read it on a Shabbat, after my family had gone to bed that Friday night. I sat down with the loose leaves and began to read, and I didn't stop until I had read all 61 pages, after which I felt joyfully dizzy, inspired, spiritually intoxicated, really for the rest of the whole Sabbath. I told my colleagues, Toby Janicki and Boaz Michael, about the book, and I remember them reading it on a plane that we shared on the way to Israel one time, after which they said, "We have to republish this." Although the book was out of print and the copyright had expired, we contacted the Levertoff estate to secure the rights. Here we are, 2 years later, preparing to republish the book with annotations, a new introduction, and with an accompanying study guide exposition. What is it about this 85-year-old book that made us feel it needed to be reprinted today? Paul Philip Levertoff was a man ahead of his time. When he first published Love and the Messianic Age, he was just beginning his work at Holy Trinity in Shoreditch, London, where he had established the first real Messianic congregation in the modern era. Levertoff longed for an authentic Jewish expression of faith in Messiah, and he argued passionately for the establishment of a Jewish congregational movement. In the 1920s, he issued a call to Jewish believers in the London area, inviting them to form a Jewish Christian congregation. Levertoff became the only Anglican minister to be conducting services while wearing a talit and kippah, leading his congregation in the recitation of the Shema and traditional Jewish prayers, blended with the Anglican Church's order of service, and reading aloud to the community from a Torah scroll. At Sabbath meals, he led the congregation in traditional hand washing before breaking bread and then adorned the meal with Sabbath table songs and so on. For several decades, he continued this rather lonely work, shunned by non-Messianic Jews as a missionary trap, and eschewed by the rest of the church. Today, though, there are Messianic Jewish congregations all over North America, Europe, Israel, all over the world. Levertoff grew up with Hasidic teaching and ideas. He swam in the sea of Talmud as a star pupil at the Volozhin Yeshiva. He was fluently conversant with the obscure and cryptic, esoteric works of Jewish mysticism. All of that background gave him a completely different perspective on the Gospels and the writings of the apostles. When at the age of 17, he was able to spend time formally studying the Gospels, he recognized the intrinsic Jewish nature of the material. More than that, he recognized themes, ideas, and concepts that were common in Jewish mysticism and Hasidus. He wondered how anyone could possibly grasp the message of the book, the message of the gospel, if they were unfamiliar with the Jewish background. Levertoff began to dream about Jewish believers, and he began to think about how their theology might be informed by the broader base of Jewish literature as his own was. It was that inspiration that drove him to write the as yet untranslated German treatise, The Religious Ideas of the Hasidim. The Religious Ideas of the Hasidim was supposed to be an academic inquiry into comparative religion, comparing Hasidic Judaism and New Testament Christianity, but in reality, the work was actually an attempt on Levertoff's part to work out a Christian Hasidic theology that could be utilized in a community of Jewish believers. The work was influenced by the writings of Levertoff's distant ancestor, Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, and the founder of the Hasidic dynasty, which resulted in today's Chabad-Lubavitch movement. When Levertoff relocated to England and began his work there, he translated the essentials of that book, Religious Ideas of the Hasidim, into English, and the result was Love and the Messianic Age. The full title is Love and the Messianic Age in hitherto untranslated Hasidic writings, with special reference to the fourth gospel. What does that mean? It works like this. Love in the Messianic Age compares Hasidic Judaism and its ideologies with those of the apostles, focusing primarily on the Gospel of John. Levertoff says that the mystical and transcendent movement of Jewish piety has an almost Johannine coloring. In the first 6 chapters, he briefly summarizes the complex and esoteric teachings of mystical Judaism and Hasidic Judaism, exposing the reader to a variety of spiritual constructs, some of which are inspiring and insightful, and some of which may seem a little dubious. He's not endorsing each idea, he's simply reporting it. He's merely presenting these concepts as they are taught in Hasidic Judaism for the purpose of comparison and contrast with apostolic theology. Levertoff's method invites the reader to withhold judgment until the epilogue, when after 6 chapters of describing Jewish mystical ideas about the soul, its relationship with God, the efficacy of prayer, the importance of joy, and a host of other teachings from Jewish mysticism, he finally takes us into the book of John. Then, in a series of rapid citations from the words of Yeshua, he demonstrates what could be called a mystical Hasidic thrust behind the gospel. The focus of the work is on the concept of love, love for God and love of fellow, as expressed in Hasidic thought and the words of Yeshua. Love for God is bound up with the experience of knowing God and fearing God, relationship to Him through His Torah, a life characterized by joy, by prayer, and repentance. In other words, this is a book about how we experience God and godliness in this world, in this present age, and in the Messianic age to come. Now, this is not easy reading. It deals with large, abstract theological concepts in a very short summary form. Levertoff's language is academic. It's densely packed and often cryptic as the sources that he's citing. So to assist readers in unlocking the contents of love in the Messianic age, First Fruits of Zion has created an accompanying study guide which can be purchased through the ministry, written in a devotional style with short, bite-sized chunks that take and expand on the concepts and connect them to the words of Yeshua and the apostles. Love and the Messianic Age is an important book for Messianic Judaism and Christianity both. It opens a field of inquiry and reflection which encourages us to internalize the spiritual truths of theology and our faith in Messiah. And it causes us to consider our relationship with God, our motivations for serving Him, and how our interaction with God and Torah can be expressed in a heart of joy, acts of love, fervent prayer, and sincere repentance. Most importantly, Levertoff's work demonstrates just how mysterious and how wonderful the gospel message actually is.